God, I love being right. Baby dolls. When last we gathered to be horny on Maid, we were talking about how the show Heated Rivalry is so good because the romance genre is so good. And we're going to continue that theme today, but we're also going to talk about how this show is such bloody good television, it almost makes me angry. Apart from mainlining this show several times now, I don't think I can confess how many times without everyone I know losing all respect for me. I have been following the discourse around this show because media is my jam, PR and comms is my jam, and watching people slowly get it. Watching not not the audiences that I thought the show was going to reach get it, but mainstream audiences get it, and new audiences get it, and whole media outfits and conglomerates get it. Oh my God, it's, just, I love being right, injected into my veins. First of all, last time when I did my speed through of this series, I think we had gotten up to episode 4, which is kind of the emotional gut punch of the series. When all of the major themes that I had talked about that really stood out to me, the themes of communication and intimacy, not just sex, were really, really coming to the fore and coming to their crisis point. I didn't go too much into the plot of episode 4, I think, in my last video because it was very fresh and very traumatizing. But if you've watched the show, which I assume you have because you're here, you know what happens. Just a quick recap. Episode 1 introduces our characters. And in very, very rapid fire succession, we're moving through time quickly. I'll come back to the structure of the show, but we move through time quickly and we understand these characters through the snapshots of their lives and careers. Who they are, where they come from, what their family situations are, their unique triggers, how they each approach their career, and thus far, how each of them have approached their sexuality. Episode 2, we start to understand the stakes for them a bit more. Their sexual encounters and intimacy is starting to creep up more and more. They continue their arc of being rivals on the ice and just unable to stay away from each other off the ice. It's not serious, but they continue to be drawn to each other and each on their own kind of emotional arc and journey. We get more of a sense of why they make the choices that they do individually. Shane, our beloved neurotic little uptight, fragile, freckled flower, is ultra high performing. He's got his brand deals. He's got his high profile agenda. He's got his community representation. Oh golly, if you shoved a lump of coal down his throat, you'd get a diamond in a week. Ilya, totally different, a very different kind of man, a very different kind of person, already come to terms with his own sexuality and how he moves through the world, but guarded for different reasons. His political situation in Russia, where being queer of any kind is not possible for him, his family situation being absolute trash. And of course, free floating in all of this is the reality of homophobia in the modern world, even today, and especially in the ultra-masculine and ultra-mask world of ice hockey. Episode 3, the bottle episode, the emotional heart of this show. I am like, now that the show is done, I'm like, that's why episode 3 needed to happen. We pivot away from the main characters to meet a totally different couple. And through the experience of a totally different couple, of a man at a very different place in his hockey career, a man or two men who are more emotionally mature than our young boys main protagonists, who don't struggle with the same kind of communication problems. If anything, they communicate beautifully well. But the pressures and realities and, latent prejudices of life and reality make the relationship they want to have with each other untenable. And it's through their experience that we understand what the wider stakes are for Ilya and for Shane, our main beautiful, lovely boys. We understand through the lens of Scott Hunter, captain of Team America, and you know, kind of elder statesmen of this world, who still can't come out, who still feels his own bundles of pressures and responsibilities and the realities of homophobia in the world that he inhabits. So we get a glimpse now of why Shane and Ilya feel the way they do. We've gotten glimpses of it in Ep 1 and Ep 2, but I love how they use the experience of a totally different character in a totally different circumstance to really, really draw out what the future our main boys have to look forward to if nothing changes. Episode 4, it all comes to a head because that's the episode in which the stakes get raised for our main boys. They're no longer just screwing around with each other. Feelings have officially entered the chat. If you read the books and you enjoy them, you can interpret that in a few ways. I think that any good adaptation has to stand on its own, and I think the show does, and I'll come back to that. But you can see that feelings have been involved a lot longer than these boys have the talent and the skills and the language to express and to cope with and to navigate, either with themselves or with one another. At a wonderful, wonderful moment of hooking up, for the first time, really, they say each other's first names to one another. And it's the cue to the audience and it's a cue to the characters that it's not just about sex anymore. They have a deeper connection. And it's come off the back of these kind of bonding, hangout kind of moments where they speak more about their sexualities and their families. The intimacy is growing along with the sexual engagements and the emotional development of each of these characters. But then Shane, our beautiful, fragile, freckled flower, freaks out. Ilya has come to terms with his sexuality. He has no problem being attracted to Shane. But this episode demonstrates that Shane just hasn't yet. He flees, and you know, their relationship hits the skids. Shane starts dating a woman, kind of, and Ilya gets ferociously jealous. There is a fantastic scene at the end of Ep 4 in the club. Again, I'm going to come back to that, but oh my God, everyone's hearts were on the floor. Then that's where I had gotten up to in my videos, and then episode 5 drops. And episode 5 is the climax of the show. It is when all of these themes come together and deliver on the promise of this show. It starts out with the most tender and touching scene with Shane and his girlfriend Rose, and she gets it. She knows what she's dealing with here. And again, I'll come back to this because it's all so good. But she creates the space for him and the opportunity for him and extends the invitation for him to be honest about his sexuality. And for the first time, he is able to verbalize to another person that he's been with another man. And in this scene, we see that when she asks him questions about what being with another man has meant to him, was it better than, you know, their presumably really terrible sexual encounters, we see Shane's flashing back, but he's not flashing back to, you know, like a hardcore moment. He's flashing back to his first real tender kiss with Ilya. He flashes back to like needing him so desperately that they just jump one another. Again, like not in the overt sexual way, but in the yearning kind of way. Shane verbalizes, yeah, that's what I want. You know, I'd rather be with men, and we see with one man in particular. And Rose is beautiful about it, and you know, they become friends instead of lovers as they're meant to be. The episode pivots and we see that Shane and Ilya are playing together on the same team for the first time. Innuendo much. And because they're playing together representing, I think, their conference against the Eastern Conference against the Western Conference, they're put on the same team and they're given a different opportunity to bond with one another in a different kind of setting than they've had before. And throughout the episode, I just wanted to, like, for both of these characters, again, with the themes of communication and intimacy, I'm like, look at our precious angel babies using their words. Oh, I'm like a proud mama. They're starting to edge out of their shells and their safe spaces and be a little bit more vulnerable with one another. Ilya is very brave and asks what's going on with that girl you were hanging out with, you know, fearing that the answer might hurt him. And then later, after they've had this amazing chemistry on ice, they seem like it's implied, I think, that they won their game together. They've had these hilarious, beautiful little moments of just like hints at a very normal kind of future. Like, oh my God, Ilya's playing in the pool with a bunch of his teammates' kids, and Shane, who has never been like relaxed a day in his life, is, you know, bundled up by the side of the pool, looking stiff and straight, and you know that in the back of his mind, he's already picking out baby names. They connect again, and Shane asks to come to Ilya's room, as they always do when they're hooking up. But instead of initiating a hookup, Shane uses his words and initiates a conversation where he verbalizes for the first time properly the words, "I think I'm gay," which is hilarious. And Ilya bursts out laughing because he's like, dude, we've been banging for a decade. But to Shane, this is the significant moment. He finally has the language, and he feels safe enough with the language to express that that's what he is. And he doesn't stop there. Baby boy is brave. And he says, not only am I gay, I like you, and I can't pretend that I don't anymore. The ball pivots back to Ilya, who is awash with self-loathing in so many ways, and you know, as Shane is very, very bravely being like, could we be together? Ilya's like, no, we can't. You know that I can't. And when Shane asks, because this is where Shane's frame of reference is from, oh, because of your family, it was like, no, idiot, because of Russia. I could never go home. And then he opens up about his family for the first time. It's confirmed his father and brother are both in the police. He would not be safe around them. We've seen the interactions that he has with his brother and his father, and they are tragic, you know, in just the relationships that he clearly has that break his heart. And then Ilya verbalizes the thing that we, the audience, know, but again, has not been said aloud before, that his father is dealing with dementia. And then he starts to cry. Our cocky, big, bad Russian boy like starts to cry, and Shane just holds him. And it's this beautiful moment of like radical vulnerability from both of these men who have been so uptight and so guarded in so many aspects of their lives. But again, because of the connection that they have had for so long, they feel able to do this, even though they've hurt one another in different ways. The crescendo is starting to build. The stakes are about to be raised again. Ilya gets the call. His dad has passed. He goes back to Russia and takes care of the funeral, but is still continuing to talk to Shane. They're texting, they're calling, they're reaching out. They have these cheeky, flirtatious moments, and clearly some off-camera spice happens, which is important that it's off-camera. At his father's funeral, clearly depressed as hell, but is confronted by his brother who we know Ilya has been supporting, who's demanding, all right, what's going to happen now? You know, the implication being, you're still going to pay for me. They have a confrontation that's sparked when his brother insults Svetlana, you know, Ilya's ride or die best friend. And Ilya finally lays down the law and says, never contact me again. You can keep this apartment. I will take care of my niece, his brother's child, by setting up a trust fund for her, but you will never speak to me again. You're like, get out. So he severs ties and has this beautiful moment with Svetlana, who indicates to him for the first time, again through the use of language, speaking Russian, but, you know, subtitled, that, you know, she knows that Ilya is in love with a man. And it's unclear if she knows specifically who the pseudonym Jane stands for in Ilya's phone, but she knows that Ilya is in love with a man, and she loves and supports him dearly, and that's not going to change. Then, golly, probably the best scene in the series in some ways. Certainly the one that is getting a huge amount of buzz for the actor Connor Story, and rightly so. He delivers a 4-minute monologue in Russian when he calls Shane just to talk to him, because he's just had this horrible confrontation with his brother, and he literally doesn't have the words because he doesn't speak English well enough, and he's so upset that he can't really function, across two languages to express what he's feeling and how lonely he is. And Shane has the brilliant idea to say, just talk to me. I won't understand the Russian, but it will help you feel better. Again, the theme of communication. And Ilya just delivers this banger of a monologue where he just says what we have seen portrayed beautifully in the acting and the framing and the editing up to this point. He is so alone. He doesn't have anybody except for Svetlana. But even that connection, as dear to him as it is, isn't enough because he's in love with Shane. And nothing else comes close to that feeling that he has for him. And he doesn't know what to do about it because their love seems so impossible. He knows he's in love with Shane, and he doesn't know what Shane feels for him. So in another way, he's just alone. And side note, for those who don't know, this scene happens in the books, but the text of it was completely written by Jacob Tierney, with the exception of like one line. I have so many things to say about Jacob Tierney, but in terms of writing and acting, I cried watching this scene. It was beautiful. Then the drama. The drama. Shane is injured on ice and is removed from a game. And that just, for such an emotional episode, like there were just the most brilliant moments of comedy because, again, Shane, a man who's never been relaxed a day in his life, is high off his ass on drugs at the hospital. And Ilya comes to visit him in the hospital. And Shane is just high as a kite and happy as a clam. Important to note that he came up with this plan before he was inebriated on medical whatever. Continues this stretch of vulnerability and asks Ilya, don't go back to Russia this summer, come spend your holiday with me in Canada, and spend a couple of weeks just with him. And Ilya, who is role reversal, stressed as hell, seeing his man down on a gurney like this, also is, suddenly stressed that like Shane is talking in public, and there's a moment after it's like, okay, maybe, but like you need to rest, calm down. When, they part and they go back to using one another's last names because a nurse has come into the room, and you see Ilya walking out like, get well soon. Shh, shut up. And it's comedy gold. Like the way that this show pivots from like these intense moments of like feelings and vulnerability to like just perfectly timed comedy. Episode 5 wraps up with the climax of the series where Ilya and Shane are independently watching the final game of the playoffs. Our other main man, Scott Hunter, has led his team to the finals, and we hear from the announcer that they haven't been in the finals for over 20 years. This is a big moment for him. And in this world, his team wins the equivalent of the Stanley Cup. It's the climax. It's the ultimate moment of his career. It's everything that he's worked for. And then as the celebrations are starting to take place around him and his team, all of his teammates, family members come out onto the ice. And Scott is standing there alone. But Kip is in the audience. I think it's implied that, Scott's probably left him these tickets and Kip's been able to attend his games. But at least in the context of the show, it doesn't seem as though they've been together during this time. And Scott takes the decision to wave Kip down onto the ice and to kiss him in front of everybody. And it is this glorious moment of triumph that is so beautiful and touching. And frankly, the cinematography in this scene, the acting in this scene, the musical choices in this scene, this was perfect television. It was perfect television. It was so beautifully built up and delivered because episode 3 needed to happen so that we get this payoff in episode 5. We see what it means for other people. We see what it means for our main boys. Because watching this happen, Ilya immediately picks up the phone, calls Shane and says, I'm coming to the cottage. Then we, smash to credits and like the whole, audience watching screams. Episode 6 is the aftercare, the come down, the coziness and the safe space that, again, the romance genre is particularly good at delivering. We see it opens with Scott not only having won the Stanley Cup equivalent in this world, but then also getting MVP. Like, he's having the best year. And he gives this really beautiful speech, which again echoes his speech in Ep 3, about coming out and how scary it is. And I loved this because, again, I love being right and validated. He talks specifically, and he uses this specific word of how lonely he's been. Not like because of the choices that he's had to stay in the closet. The use of the word lonely there is so intentional, and so powerful, and is a wonderful little middle finger to homophobia in the sports world everywhere. I think we can agree. We get that beautiful kind of bow tied up. Oh, we also see Kip is watching his speech in the bar with Elena in his community, which, again, beautiful. Love it. And then we're back to our main boys. Ilya's flown in to Canada, and he and Shane go off and spend a couple of weeks together. And it is just scene after scene of them talking with one another and opening up even more to one another and being playful with one another and being safe with one another. They have these beautiful, beautiful individual scenes, again, where Shane is relaxed with Ilya and Ilya is gentle and funny with Shane. The comfort that these two men give to one another and provide for one another is totally what this particular part of the arc is about. We get a little bit more of Ilya's backstory. Then, in the same way that episode 4 was Ilya / the actor Connor Story's time to shine, episode 5 is really Shane / Hudson Williams' time to shine, because these two men are giving very different performances. I think Connor Story is very rightly getting praised for his portrayal as Ilya. Is beautiful. But not for one moment do I think that Hudson Williams is doing anything less impressive, particularly if you have followed their press and media tour, their PR tour at all. Maybe I'll touch on that at the end. But the performance of Ilya is this performance of kind of a brash, swaggering man with this very, very tender center. What Hudson Williams is doing is much more subtle, but his micro acting in his face is just captivating to watch. He's playing a very different kind of man. He's playing a man who's was strongly implied in the text, and I think subsequently confirmed by the author, to be neurodivergent. He's very, very uptight. He's very, very controlled. His performance is different than Connor's stories, but it's so powerful. And he had moments in episode 4 that were just gorgeous. But episode 5 is Hudson Williams' episode. Oh, golly, it's just so tender. It's so fucking tender. And we just don't see a lot of tenderness on TV in this way. It was so gorgeous to watch. We know that the boys are banging all over the cabin, but they're also, playing sports together and playing video games together. We have, again, these fantastic moments of comedy. We have fantastic moments of spice again. Ep 5 was completely devoid of explicit open door spice scenes. Didn't happen, because the whole point of that episode was intimacy of another kind. We're bringing the spice back. But there's this moment of the two guys sitting on the sofa, both on their phones, and Ilya casually throws out I could marry Svetlana. She's got American citizenship, and it would get me away from my Russian passport, and it would be a solution. And Shane, angry kitten Shane, is stressed at the prospect, and it's well, you like girls, you could marry someone else. And Ilya, shit-stirring little Ilya, God, I love him and I relate to him so closely. It's a little bit frightening. Gives him this beautiful rebuttal. It's golly, women are hot and they're a lot of fun, but the annoying thing is I'm in love with this guy and I don't think it's ever gonna stop. Fuck my life, right? It's so beautiful. And Shane, says, just, okay, don't marry that Lana will figure something out. And then we immediately pivot to a scene where Shane, who's clearly been sitting up in bed all night because he's got to solve this problem now, wakes Ilya up to pitch him. He's come up with a 17-point plan to get his man out of Russia and to him, and he is not letting anyone else touch him or come near him. Like, he is Una Hollander's son, baby. But even this turns into this beautiful moment where, you know, Shane's pitching it like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We need to transfuse your team to Canada. We need to start this charity work together. That'll give us an opportunity to be seen together in public. When we both retire, we can be together for real, like blah, 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 blah. And Ilya, again, T is like, I don't speak your language. Please slow down. But when he cottons on, goes, wait, you're thinking that far in advance? And Shane goes, yes, about this I am. And Ilya breaks. We know he's in love with Shane. We know he's in love with Shane. And we know that he's vulnerable about to what degree that's reciprocated. And Shane has just told him that he has a whole vision for a future for them together. And this is the first time I love yous are exchanged. And it's just, again, I was crying, team. God, this show is so good. But unfortunately, there's still 10 minutes left in the episode, and we get the final emotional kicker where they're discovered by Shane's dad, because his parents, you know, live fairly nearby. And Shane freaks out because he's just been outed to his family. It's not been on his terms. He feels a tremendous amount of guilt for having lied to them for as long as he has. And he's panicking. Our baby's having a panic attack. But Ilya is a rock and just like, I'm here for you. We got you. Let's go talk to them together. Like, once Ilya has the confidence that Shane loves him, like, there is no length that this man will not go to for his boy. And it is just beautiful. And the final, you know, plot points of this episode is Shane and Ilya coming out to his parents, who hilariously always thought that their son might be gay. The thing that they're really having a hard time wrapping around is that he's actually been in a 10-year situationship with his arch nemesis in the league, and it turns out that they're actually in love. That's what's like, you're watching his parents like needle scratch and be like, a boyfriend we can handle, but this? But again, the writing is beautiful, and there's these moments of beautiful reconciliation with Shane and his mother in particular, who is also his manager and has been, you know, a true hockey mom. She has been pushing him to succeed, but is also probably been his fiercest protector in some ways. And she realizes that she made him feel unsafe to come out to, and that guts her. She feels so badly about this. She apologizes to him for making him feel that way. And then at the end, we've got this family unit. Like, they're making plans. Yuna's already got her PR plan drawn up. Love that woman. And there's a wonderful reference back to our hero Scott Hunter, and Ilya references that, oh yeah, I called him, you know, just because what he did was really brave. I didn't tell him about us, but like, basically that Scott doing what he did was the wink wink game changer that made him feel like they could have a different future. And then hilariously, because these characters are on point, Shane has a minor panic attack about all of this happening. He is having the worst day of his life. He's been outed, he is stressed, and Ilya is just mainlining pasta, being like, this is a nice family who's feeding me. Like, Shane Hollander is dying and Ilya's like, I'm having such a nice day. It's so funny. But then there's the last tender moment of the episode where, you know, Ilya is the one to talk Shane down and say, no, you're good here. You've got your family, you've got your boyfriend, we're all here and you're safe. Again, another hilarious moment. Shane's like, you're my boyfriend? And Ilya's like, yeah, I think so. You know, after he's come up with this 17-point plan for the rest of their lives. But, you know, it's the word, communication, it's the word, the language of boyfriend that he just needs to hear. It's beautiful. And then they literally drive off into the sunset at the close of the episode. In the romance genre, this is called the happily for now. There's the happily ever after, or the happily for now. And either way, whatever you get in a particular romance story, it ties this beautiful bow on the narrative arc that, regardless of what's coming or what else could happen in this moment, everything is good and okay, and our characters are safe and happy and in love with one another. It's so bloody satisfying. So that's your too long recap of the last 2 episodes of this series. But now the thing that I really want to focus on is why this is such fucking good TV. I referenced this in my last video, but this show was made on a budget. You can tell that they shot this thing with like 3 ham sandwiches and a dream. But God, it is such good TV because they were constrained in their budgets, because this was a small production, because this was a risk in so many ways to adapt not just a romance book, but a male romance book. This was a passion project in every conceivable sense, and you can tell. Jacob Tierney has given a masterclass in how to adapt a book for TV. I've been reading some of the interviews that he's done, and he's kind of nailed it in a statement that I found. I'll link the article if I can find it again, where basically he says something to the effect of if you feel like you have to fix a story in order to bring it to life in a new medium, you shouldn't be adapting it. And that is 100% true. So many people who want to adapt a piece of film or media, what they actually want to do is rewrite the story, or they want to put their own stamp of creativity on it, but in a way that like supersedes the author's intent. And I'm not saying all adaptational changes are wrong. I mean, witness Guillermo del Toro's take on Frankenstein. That is an adaptation that in so many ways is emotionally and aesthetically true to the piece, but he did make changes. The point is what changes you make and why, and how it fits the medium. Jacob Tierney made changes from the book, but it is astonishing to me how little he changed in terms of the fundamentals. So for example, like many romance series, it's not just one book that stands utterly alone. There's a series of interconnected stories with characters that cameo or influence plots in other couples or characters' lives. This is very, very common across all the different subgenres, and actually creates a world that enabled Tierney to conceptually do a season 2 if he wants to, and thank God we're getting one. But also enabled him, because of the formatting of the romance genre, to tell a complete story in a single season, which is another thing we don't get a lot of in TV these days, because everyone wants to do the cliffhanger, and it frustrates me. Just tell a good story. Just tell a good contained story that makes sense, that is consistent. And again, if you're adapting a piece of media that already exists, that stays emotionally true. That's what Jacob Tierney did. The fact that he did this with romance, which is historically, treated as, women's literature. Side note, it's very funny how many people are finding out that women like some really filthy stuff out there. I will never not be delighted by that. It amuses me terribly. But it's not really taken seriously. A lot of genre media isn't taken seriously, but for example, 2 of my favorites, I love murder mystery, detective fiction, and I love romance. One of these is taken more seriously by broader culture than the other, and I'm pretty sure that's just because of misogyny. But Jacob Tierney is on record as saying he loved this book. He loved these characters and this story, and it shows. He wanted to tell this story, not his own version of it. He didn't want to change the tone or the tenor. He didn't want to make his own statement. He wanted to tell this story extremely well and with high fidelity, and the man nailed it. Again, on the subject of budget, What that meant in terms of production is that there is not a single shot wasted. There is not a single line of dialogue that doesn't matter. There is not a single needle drop of music that isn't used to maximum effect. This is a perfect example of how sometimes constraints and limitations can be good because they force artists to make choices about the kind of story that they're telling. I don't think Netflix could have made this. HBO is distributing it, and thank goodness for that, because Crave is a small streaming service, but thank God HBO didn't make this. I don't think in our current climate and with whatever else is going on, but more importantly in our current media business model structure, that this show could have been made by American Hollywood. It had to be made as a passion project for a much smaller, independent kind of service from another country. Thank God. You know, we live in an interesting age of creative work because not everyone who's given a green light to make TV is good at it. Probably one of the best examples of this in recent memory is how Game of Thrones memorably ended. Look what happens when you move away from adapting some source material with fidelity to try and rush something in the end, or don't respect the material or literally run out of road. It's like, it's a train wreck. The other thing that was happening simultaneously to this that I think is fascinating is that Stranger Things' latest season dropped on Netflix. And that's another example to me of how over-bloated and overinflated so many parts of creative media have become. It's taken years to put each season of this show together. And as a result, the actors have aged up like hilariously to the point of like non-believability. Millie Bobby Brown started as a child, and the actress now is married with a child. Like, and they're still supposed to be like in high school. Like, it stretches credulity. It doesn't take 5 years to do a season of television. Apparently, the entire season of Heated Rivalry was shot in about 35 days. They didn't have the budget for special effects. They didn't have the budget for different kinds of staging or what have you. Like, which means that a lot of the shots have to be close up because they probably didn't have the budget for tons of crowd work or tons of location filming, but that serves the story because the story is so internal. Sorry, got off track. The point is, it doesn't take 5 years to create a blockbuster season of TV. It takes a good story, competent production team, and talented actors. Jacob Tierney turned what is probably one of the most consequential pieces of television in years around in less than 6 months. I don't want to hear anyone talking about needing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a season of TV anymore. It's like, this show was made to show how hollow Hollywood has become. It's astonishing. Some of the things that I wanted to talk about specifically in terms of the technical creation of this as a TV show is how timing works. There's a lot of chatter online that the early episodes move too quick because like every 10 seconds there's a time jump, which, you know, is funny. But again, if you understand the world of the books, this is a story that's playing out over a decade. You know, the time jumps happen in the books too. But something that I really like, a creative choice that Jacob Tierney did, is that the early episodes, especially Ep 1, moves fast. It's like 6 months later, 1 year later, blah, 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 blah. We are skipping through time. But as the relationship and as the intimacy and as the connection between these men builds, time literally slows down. We don't have these massive leaps. The leaps become shorter. The time that we spend with them together becomes longer and more significant. Like, that is an intentional choice to use timing to demonstrate the connection and the growing intimacy and communication between these two men. Again, you can tell that budgeting played a role in this, but Jacob Tierney said, that's a challenge, and let me see how I'm going to make smart choices with it. And he did. Another thing that I cannot stress enough is the musical palette of this show is immaculate. The song choices that they use, Canadian artists, most of them, a lot of independent artists, like these were deliberate choices, which again synced with the fact that this was a passion project, budget production, done on small scale, not big Hollywood. And the tone of this show is set by the music in some really, really key ways. There's a couple examples that I really want to highlight. Much has been made of the use of tattoos, all the things she said, for the gay yearning scene in episode 4, which emotionally devastated us all. I don't want to belabor this too much, but one of the things that I really liked about that piece of music is we start with the classic tattoo song, but the song morphs from the original song to a cover by a male artist. And it's used to end the scene on the reiterative chorus of "This is not enough." And the final shots of the scene are these men in situations where whatever it is they're trying to do with other people or with themselves or with being closeted or just unable to connect with one another is not enough for them. It is choice. Everyone's already talked about this to death, but for me, like, the standout song of this show is the use of Wolf's Parade, "I'll Believe in Anything." This is the song at the emotional climax of episode 5 when Scott invites Kip onto the stage, and it is so significant because of how it's been built into the book, or into the show, excuse me. On one of my many rewatches, I realized that the song opens episode 3, our bottle episode, as well. It is kind of the anthem of our other main man, Scott Hunter. It is the first song we hear associated with him, and the lyrics of the song are so beautiful and used so well in this show because it opens with the chorus, "Give me your eyes, I need sunshine." And in episode 3, it's the exact same song. It's the exact same song used twice in the show, but in episode 3, it is almost a cry of pain because it opens on Scott, who is lonely. He needs sunshine. He doesn't have it. He's isolated. And then he finds this man who makes him believe that other things are possible. And there's a very important line from Kip's best friend, Elena, who is kind of gently chastising Scott for not considering how staying closeted is hurtful to Kip. And she tells him, Kip deserves sunshine. And then critically she adds, "And so do you." The way that this song is used in episode 3 as the opening is a cry of loneliness and like a cry of lack and something that this man and this relationship doesn't have. And then in episode 5, when all of the families are coming onto the ice, and Scott is standing there alone and realizing he doesn't want to be, that song picks up again and opens up, "Give me your eyes, I need sunshine." And he sees Kip in the crowd and he makes his choice. And what started as like this pang of longing, the same song, these same musical beats, what sounded so sad in episode 3 becomes this triumphant, beautiful anthem because they both get the sunshine that Elena says that they deserve because they choose it. And the music swells and golly, just the way that they sync the shots to the music, just gut punch after gut punch. There's even a beautiful moment where the song, everything, all noise, all sound cuts out at the moment so that Ilya can deliver, the line, "I'm coming to the cottage," to Shane. And then the music comes back in. It's beautiful. It's such a good use of this song. The other thing about this song in particular is the contrast. Earlier in the episode when Ilya is delivering his monologue in Russian to Shane, because the piece of music that is playing is the Moonlight Sonata. And Ilya, who is alone in the dark, the way that the shot has him literally sitting in a tunnel, contained and framed in, he's in darkness, but this romantic, beautiful music is still playing, which is almost stereotypically, you know, a piece of music associated with yearning and with longing. But to contrast Moonlight Sonata with I'll Believe in Anything with the chorus, I Need Sunshine at the end. This is art. Finally, the other kind of technical thing that I want to talk about, because I think it's done so well in this show, is the art of planting and payoff. There are so many shot-for-shot callbacks in this show, which is meant to remind the audience to invoke an earlier feeling. There are lines of text and lines of music and like that interplay with one another. And again, in a way that is such competent TV writing and making. Like, again, on one of my many watch throughs, like I just started listing out all of the parallels. In Ep 1, we see kind of a contrasting shot as both Ilya and Shane each lose/win a game against one another. And there's a shot of the loser skating in one direction and then in another game, the other skating. Like there's parallel, but there's some that are just real gut punches. Their first hookup in episode 1 is mirrored in so many ways with their first reconnection in episode 6. Like the framing of the positioning of the actors is very similar, if not identical, but episode 1 takes place at nighttime in darkness and episode 6 takes place in sunshine, in daylight. Two very different, like shot for shot, the same thing. The actions are the same. The experiences could not be more different. There's some real comedic gold in there too. Like again, Yuna, Shane's mom, briefly appears in Ep 1 to make what happens in Ep 6 when she realizes what's been going on in her boy's heart even funnier. The use of foot taps between these characters. It's again just callbacks. There are foot taps in episode 1 where they're, you know, cautiously signaling a degree of support to one another that other people can't see. And then there's a moment of it in episode 6 where they're signaling comfort and solidarity with one another. There's a couch scene in Ep 4 where the boys they're banging, but they're sitting on opposite sides of the sofa because they don't know how to be vulnerable with one another. And then in episode 6, they're sitting on opposite sides of the sofa, but their feet are touching. And it's so cute. There's moments of dialogue that call back to one another. Again, in episode 1, Ilya is kind of flirting with Shane by saying, you know, I like to be dangerous when he's describing his past experience with men. And then kind of teasing Shane in episode 6, you like to be bad too. And it's a wonderful callback, but it's also a moment for Shane to go, yeah, but that's not what this is. You know, I'm not being bad with you. I love you. There's even moments for all of the girl gang characters. In episode 1, I realized, like, Svetlana teases Ilya, like, you don't deserve me for loving you and supporting you. And she's being very playful because at that point they're fuck buddies. But in episode 5, after he's had this dramatic confrontation with his brother, he says it to Svetlana, and he kind of thinks it's true. He says, I don't deserve you. And Svetlana immediately says, yes, you do. And you will never lose me. It doesn't matter that he's not in love with her. She's not going anywhere. If episodes 1 through 3 are the planting, episodes 4, 5, and 6 are the payoff. Like, if you've watched this series, great, go back and watch it again for the callbacks, for the reference shots, for the musical notes. You will be so impressed. Just this play, this call and response. When I say not a shot of this TV show is wasted, I mean it. Technical brilliance and capabilities aside, there's so much about this show that I am deeply in love with. Like, one of the things, and let's be clear, there are criticisms to be made. Nothing is perfect. It's not, but it's pretty damn close. And anything that I have to critique about the show is pretty nitpicky. I'll leave that to much more capable and competent people. But there's so much to celebrate about this show, and to acknowledge and to reward, because If we want good media, if we want good stories made by competent teams, if we want fresh acting talent, because I am starved for it. I am so sick of seeing like the same 20 people in everything that's put out by Hollywood. Like, thank God this was a small passion project that picked two ferociously talented no-name actors. I hope those boys stay booked and busy. God knows they deserve it. If that's the kind of media we want, we have to reward and celebrate and acknowledge what it does right. A few of the things I think this show does right include a wonderful, refreshing absence of misogyny. It's nowhere to be seen. Like, the closest thing that we get to that is the fact that Ilya's mother is kind of the dead anime mom trope. But even that, I think, is handled really, really well, in the sense that, you see how much Ilya loved her, and, he has nothing but wonderful things to say about her. In the context of the wider book universe and what we are likely to see in episodes or in season 2, her struggles with mental health become even more significant for Ilya in his situation. So, like, even though it's the dead anime mom trope, it's treated with love. Shane's mom could have been the stereotypical Asian tiger mom, and in many ways she was set up to be that. That's what the character beats are giving, but it's subverted in the end, because what you see is not a woman is trying to be hard on her son. You see a woman who fiercely loves and protects and defends her son. And as soon as she needs to come to grips with new information about him, she does. Again, in the wider world of the books, something I really hope we see in season 2, she jokes that Ilya is her favorite son. Like, the way that Shane's family absorbs and adopts Ilya, no questions asked, is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I really hope we see more of it. But even dead anime mom and possibly overbearing mom aside, I feel like both of those tropes are a little bit subverted. And then every single woman on this show is a friend, a ride or die friend, is a lover, is a parent, is community, is a safe space. Like, the women in this show are not the point of this show. They aren't the center of it. They aren't the romantic leads. It's not about them. And yet the characters are each deeply, deeply loved and respected and valued and important to the plot. That's how you do a show that is not about women, but doesn't have contempt for women, that loves women. Other things that I think the show did really well is it could have leaned in more to the reality of homophobia. And I don't say that in any way to dismiss or diminish the reality of homophobia. But I thought that this show did a really good job of showing without telling. We understand through the choices and the actions of the characters, through some casual lines or throwaway comments from secondary cast, or just from statements about realities for political stakes in places like Russia, that this sport, this environment, this culture still isn't safe for queer men. And we get it without it having to be overblown. It was a way to demonstrate, I think, a reality that a lot of people, at least in the more privileged areas of the world, still experience homophobia today. You can still be rich. You can still be an athlete. You can still be high profile and prominent and still be very, very scared for legitimate reasons about being unable to share your sexuality publicly. I also think that the show does a really good job of demonstrating, showing, not telling, why the choice to come out is so impactful and so brave, not just because of what it does for one individual, in the case of Scott Hunter, but in the path that it cuts for those who might follow after him, our main boys. It could have been hammered home. It could have been things that insisted upon themselves in ways that I think would have taken us out of the story, and it wasn't. It was handled so deftly. One of the adaptations that Jacob Tierney did is, again, in the world of the books, I think all of the characters in different books are broadly closer to the same age, and I think Scott Hunter is closer in age to Ilian Shane in the books, if I remember correctly. But I like that the show aged him up, because again, it changes the stakes and it helps us understand the world a little bit better. It contrasts the experience of very, very young men just starting their careers with more experienced players who are still struggling with the same things. I thought it was a very smart choice. Also, Francois Arnault. Man can get it. And finally, of course, queer joy. We don't have enough of it. And a lot of what we do have in media, in my opinion, in strictly the world of According to C, can often be a little bit hallmarky. I'm listening to a lot of queer voices and queer critics about this show. A lot of them have very valid critiques or comments about specific elements of the show or specific choices, but I also think that Jacob Tierney has it right when he says that he's not trying to speak for every single queer story or experience. Again, he was trying to tell a specific story from a specific source material piece, and I think he did it really, really well. He said he wanted to tell a story of queer joy. The first few episodes will gut you, but that's what makes the payoff so incredibly profound. And I like that it ends as the book does, on the happily for now, because the realities of their world have not vanished. They are still playing their sports, which is still struggling with a culture of homophobia. They haven't figured it all out yet. Number one, it sets up the possibility for a second season without a cliffhanger. So again, the story can stand on its own merits and still keep us engaged in that world. And number two, I think it's actually very authentic to a lot of queer people's experience, where you might find a love or a community, and it doesn't solve all of your problems. They don't go away. But what you do get is the strength of a partnership or a strengthened community or family connections that makes you better able to approach those realities from a place of safety and confidence. It's not true for every queer experience, but it's true for many queer experiences that I'm personally acquainted with. I'm not making this up. When I was gushing to one of my friends, like I have this very, very dear to me friend, Chris. He's been he's probably been the friend that I've had the longest living in London. He and I bonded at a job that we both had over a decade ago, and we're still very dear friends today. We went over to dinner at his house, and Chris is a gay man, and he has seen my feral fandom of this show, and he asked me about it. We'd only gotten up, I think, to episode 4, maybe 5 at that point, and I don't want to spoil it for him because he hasn't read the books. But I was telling him about the show, and he literally asked, "Ooh, but does it end badly? It sounds like it ends badly." And that's because that's what so much of modern media has trained us to expect for queer stories. But babes, the romance genre is all about the happily for now or the happily ever after, and it will never ever let you down. This is why good genre media matters, because it's not about knowing what the ending is going to be. If you know anything about the romance genre, you knew, or you didn't even have to know these books to know how this particular story was going to end. And it doesn't diminish the emotional impact of the journey a single whit if it is well done, if it is well written, and if it is well acted. This show, done on a budget, filmed in a month, produced in less than 6, and apparently still being finally tweaked and edited while the first episodes were being shipped by Crave, is such a middle finger to our current age of overproduced slop, where we're just regurgitating old ideas, old faces, old voices, where Disney isn't even coming up with new stuff anymore. They're just creating live action versions of movies that they did half a century ago. Oh, in some cases, even a few years ago. It is such a middle finger to the idea that things like genre media with established tropes and story beats can't be done well, that you must subvert expectations in order to do good drama or do good media. Like, this show is such an alternative option to so much of what pop culture gives us, and I'm so delighted that it's how we're ending 2025. I am worried that a lot of mainstream media is going to take the wrong lessons from this, that they're going to rush out a lot of other adaptations of popular romance genres, but they're not going to treat it with anything like the respect for the source material or the technical commitment to the craft that Tierney and his team have brought to this. I personally am really excited for the adaptation of the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy, which is happening on Amazon Prime. That is another hockey romance. It's straight romance in this case. But I love Elle Kennedy. I love her work, and I hope they do right by her. I think Amazon Prime is also adapting a book by Ali Hazelwood, who I'm on record as loving. And I'm not gonna lie, I hope they're successful, but Tierney has set the bar very high. But he set the bar high not just for romance adaptations. He has set the bar high for book adaptations, period. This is how you take a book that you love and you turn it into a TV show. So yeah, that is my heated rivalry crash out. I'm delighted that this show is getting a second season. In the meantime, do yourself a favor, read something smutty. It's good for you. Also, go enjoy Connor Story and Hudson Williams on their media tour, because speaking of things that were done on a budget, you can tell that these boys like have no money. they are doing back-to-back interviews in the exact same outfits. They must be so tired from the amount of work that they're now being asked to do to promote this show now that it's kind of hit the mainstream. And you know what? I hope both of those young men stay exactly as booked and busy as they want to be. I cannot stress enough how phenomenal their talents are displayed in this show. These are two young men who deserve to have long careers ahead of them. And I'm delighted that they got such a cool jumping off project, a labor of love, a true passion project that served as a launching pad for such a level of visibility. What a gift. Go read something romantic. The spicier, the better.